Glenn, great to hear you. Great to see you here with us. I think you had this absolutely fantastic 24 hours. For me, it was fascinating. It was, I would say, as Francis Ford Coppola would put that, it was ceramic and exciting. It looked like a reality show, and yet it was pretty close to some real turmoil. I do not believe in some conspiracy theories that, you know, some people try to put it as a stage show for. No, I myself would never, I believe that a Kremlin dictator, Kremlin a midget would really risk his reputation that is already shattered. But still, there was an element of a very interesting game that was behind this whole show. And my first question to you is about your personal take on Prigozhin action. What is your understanding of his action and his and the last 24 hours in Russia?
Well, I might not disagree. I might not agree with you on some things, but I mean, the first thing was clearly that this was a piece of theatre. This was not the last 24 hours. Remember that, you know, Prigozhin pulled out of Bakhmut. That was weeks ago. That he was making these shouts about lack of ammunition, which were clearly completely and utterly nonsense. He had all the ammunition, air defense weapons, and everything that he wanted. So, I mean, what we've seen is a piece of pure theatre. Now, whether that theatre turns out to be drama, which is effectively what you're saying, or farce or even comedy, I think only time will tell us. But there are two or three things about this that people have got to get clear. The first is this was long planned. This is not anything that's happened in the last 24 hours. We've only seen the end result of it. The second thing is that what we've got an argument going on here about who can kill Ukrainians best. So we're not talking about something that is, you know, I'm going to say a coup to take over so that we can stop the war or anything. No, we're talking about how do we kill Ukrainians best? And that then brings into line of why would anybody want to take over from Putin at the moment when everything is already working in that side? It's just a matter of failure at the ground level. So there are wheels within wheels in this that we haven't seen yet. I mean, the evidence is very, very strange. I mean, if you look at it, they managed to drive almost 3/4 of the way to Moscow, fueling at Putin's relatives' fuel stations for free. They managed to go into the general staff headquarters in Rostov and chat, mark you, chat. No fighting, nobody killing anybody, no aggressive looks on any of the military's faces. So, you know, there again, people knew about this beforehand. People knew that something was going to happen. Now, you know the comment that Putin is risking everything. Putin risks nothing. Whatever happened or whatever happens, Putin's only got to say that Prigozhin was driving his forces to save me from somebody in Moscow, and it's all explained. I mean, come on, these people lie like no one's business all the time. So you don't need to think about you might be thinking in a nice, sensible, sensible Ukrainian fashion, but we're dealing with Russia here. This is theatre in some way, and I don't know what is behind the theatre exactly. Now, there are a couple of things. One is that possibly oligarchs in Moscow are out to make a regime change. That's one, and that let's use Prigozhin, or Prigozhin is part of it. He's their mate. I don't know. That's one possibility. The second possibility was that it was always designed to get Wagner into Belarusia, either to help Lukashenko or to actually to attack from Belarusia, but to put them in there in a way that doesn't make the West think, oh shit, look what's happening. Now everybody thinks, oh, they're being exiled to Belarusia. Heck, come on, you don't exile your best forces anywhere.
And this is Belarusia. They got this common state strategy, and definitely it's working to some extent, and a pretty serious extent. And this is where I completely agree with you. And this is what perplexed me in firsthand, because this is the thing that he has not exiled to say half loyal and still half like to a place like Georgia, that would be, half loyal to Kremlin and yet in a total opposition to Kremlin on a very basic level. He hasn't exiled to Argentina, like some of the Nazi collaborators 100 years ago. So it's Belarus still, and it makes perfect sense when you're saying that this would be a very smart move to move the best manager of this war company to a place that was still reluctant to openly send its forces to Ukraine and to kind of reinforce Lukashenko's Putin cronies with some of his best warlords. So from that perspective, it really makes sense. So next question would be, Glenn, do you feel that there is a potential of Wagner leader Prigozhin to join forces with some of Lukashenko warlords? And we already know that there are some of the private war companies that were founded in Belarus in the recent months, and to start its operation on the Ukrainian northern front line with Russia. What do you think?
Well, I think it's got to be a serious possibility. But purely and simply because the northern region, fighting through there is for professionals. It's not for conscripts. It's a pretty scabby area to get through. It's also probably the most weakly defended area in Ukraine. I mean, I think that's no secret. The best brigades are all down south fighting. So there would have to be some, if it starts to kick off up there, then there's got to be some serious removal of reserves into the northern region, which would completely change the whole dynamic of the battlefield. So it's got to be a possibility. I just, for your argument, why has he not been exiled to Argentina or to one of his African countries? I mean, why send him to somewhere which is potentially a battle-winning zone for Russia? That's the only sense that makes sense, in my view.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing, and let's look at the outcome. And in this situation, still the only winner in the end is Putin. Surprisingly, and I was taking this turmoil yesterday seriously, as probably 100% or 99% of Ukrainians, because we saw a couple of but we were waiting for some serious skirmish, some serious a battle with the Rosguard or whoever would stand in Prigozhin's way. But there was allegedly one helicopter downed by their forces. We saw that footage, but that's it. There was not a single serious skirmish on the whole way. And this is what made me very skeptical in the first hand yesterday. Were you skeptical from the start, or were there some sort of a turning point for you when you thought that, hell, something's wrong with this coup?
No, I've been skeptical since the moment Prigozhin bought Wagner out of Bakhmut, because you get to the end of Bakhmut and then you're supposed to break out, and at that point he pulled them out. And at that point I was saying to myself, as a military officer, there's something going on here. And I never bought this argument about about the badness of the military, the badness of the army not supporting them, because clearly they were. Because if they weren't supporting them, they were going to die of hunger. Yeah. So, I mean, if they're getting the basics of food from the military, they're getting everything else. So all this has been clearly, a nonsense for some time. I thought they were going to use Wagner to counterattack somewhere like, down south. And I was waiting for that to happen, but because none of these things make any sense, and when things don't make sense in military terms, then they don't make sense. Then it means there's another plan behind, because most things do make sense when you actually see them and follow them through. So this is, I think, is Maskarovska. This is the great Russian game of playing a game so the enemy doesn't really know what's happening, because frankly they need to do that, and they need to do that because when it's actually fighting, then they are coming off second best. So they've got to play games to get out of this.
Yeah, that's the thing. So again, there was not a single skirmish between regular forces, Wagner group. There was still, there were Kadyrivtsi, but I mean, no one was killed. And that's the thing. So it looked like, we've been to Crimea. We saw that game already, but that was different. There were scared officers who were expecting an order from Kiev, from capital city, but no one gave them the order. It was in the first weeks of war, and it was still very different from where we stand now. Now, there's very different situation, and this is probably not a case when Prigozhin could. Or, I'm just thinking out loud, the situation within Ukrainian army and military and Wagner group could still kind of allow him to try to trade for a better position for himself and for his people, or you would think that's crap and it's still only a Putin's game?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's nonsense for the simple reason that the better position for him is in Africa, where he can make himself one of the richest people in the world. Yeah. So why mess with him? I mean, he seems to be in his own evil way completely serious about I'm going to say fucking Ukraine. I don't see any weakness in that area. I mean, if he's willing to sledgehammer someone to death who doesn't go forward, then we're not talking about someone nice. And the fact is, he's a nasty piece of shit, and he's been allowed to be a nasty piece of shit by Putin all the way through to here. Why would he then turn, only on the argument that I can kill people better? Yeah. I mean, only on one argument, I can kill people better. That's his argument. So there is no reason for him to do anything to his, to Putin back there, because then he's in worse position than he is at the moment in many ways. At the moment, he's got his group, he's got his money, he's got everything. Why would he mess that up?
Yeah, one of our fans, Finnick, her nickname is. This is one of our friends. She just writes down here in the chat, Prigozhin is a troll, and that makes perfect sense because when we remember where Prigozhin is coming from as one of those who created Putin's troll factory and Putin's fake news factory de facto. So yeah, I mean, let's look at his background to try to understand his future, which also makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I mean, I'd forgotten the troll factory, but when you listen to the way he speaks, when he's actually talking to people and he's giving these interviews, I mean, these are false. These are made up. This is exaggerated speech. His mouth movements, his facial movements are not of someone who's deeply concerned about what's going on. If you're deeply concerned, you talk in a much more, compressed anger sort of way. And there's no compressed anger. He's out there. This is crap. They're not crap. This is theatre. This is the core of it.
Great. Still, we got Igor and Musa Alamayev here, probably for the last round of comments until we call it a day, and we'll say goodbye until tomorrow. But we still got our both colleagues and friends here. Igor, was that you who wanted to add something?
Так, якщо я можу, дуже коротко. Дивіться, я розумію ці всі спосіб коментування вами цієї всієї історії, аналізування там особистісних мотивів і так далі, і так далі. І мені здається, оце ось моє застереження є велике, от, власне, до західної думки, власне, того, як я дивився, як західні експерти коментували, ті, що слідкують ці події, коментували, власне, цю ситуацію. Якби я маю таке велике застереження, що ці всі їхні особистісні мотиви, чому вони це роблять і так далі, ну, вони, в принципі, ми маємо замало інформації з одного боку, з іншого боку, це взагалі не має сенсу. Сенс є якраз говорити в тому, що це все як ситуація почалося. І ось це є важливіше для нас тут на Заході і для України так само. І від цього ми повинні будувати цю політику, натомість їхні особистісні мотиви, чи це зрежисероване, ви говорите, що це є театр, ну знаєте, є в старому анекдоті, говориться, ну, цирк так не вміє. Якби, трошки, от, власне, з цим я маю проблему. Дякую.
Thank you, Igor. And I mean, так, ми маємо насправді розмаїття припущень щодо цього, but the main thing, and this is where I agree with Glenn, and this is what I was pretty skeptical about from the start, is the lack of the real skirmishes, real fights between Rosgard and Prigozhin people, and the only situation where we saw a helicopter downed is also questionable. It looks like it was true, but still it was just one incident when we witnessed a downing of the aircraft. Anyway, this is a developing story for sure, and all of us would be following it closely and intensely. I just want to thank you, everyone, for joining us today after this crazy, hectic weekend. And definitely we will come back to discuss this whole issue tomorrow and the week to come. Glenn, thanks a lot for joining us.
Thank you.
Great to have you.